All right, so vocabulary for IELTS is the title of our lecture for today. As you guys probably remember, we have 4 vocabulary classes besides this one. So meaning you have previous vocabulary lessons, which most of you might or might have not attended yet. But let me just explain to you what they are and how this lecture is different from them. So your vocabulary 1 is for your context clues. So what do we mean by context clues? It will give you a better understanding of the reading subtest, because understanding context and being able to highlight keywords to and for against the passage and the question is the best technique for the reading subtest, especially academic. If you really want to get a higher band score for vocabulary, all right, if you really want to get a band score, higher band score for reading, then the thing is you need to attend by vocabulary 1. Now, if you are having some problems, okay, if you're having some problems with the common incorrect usage, particularly in the speaking test, then vocabulary 2 is the lecture just for you. Now, what about your vocabulary 3 and vocabulary 4 respectively? Those are your vocabulary exams, which assesses your understanding for the lecture. So again, you have your vocabulary 1. Let me just use my annotations here so that you can all understand me much better. Okay. Let me just use my annotations here. Okay. So as I was saying, you have your vocabulary 1. Now, if you have already attended your vocabulary 1, you will be much more equipped in doing the test for vocabulary 3. Now, if you have attended vocabulary 2, then you will be much more able to answer questions in vocabulary 4. Because as I was saying, vocabulary 3 and vocabulary 4 are both tests in understanding your previous vocabulary lecture. Again, vocabulary 1 is your reading and vocabulary 2 is for the speaking subtest. So what about writing? Okay, writing is one of the most important, if not the most important, because anything that you write can be an evidence against you. So again, let me just clarify, because I know there are some students who are very slow to pick up. Vocabulary 1 is for the reading. Vocab 3 is the test for it. Vocabulary 2 is for speaking. Vocabulary 4 is the test for it. Sir, question. I haven't attended vocabulary 1 yet. I haven't attended vocabulary 2 yet. I attended the lecture and I was surprised it's already in vocabulary 3. Can I take the exams? Yes, it will serve as your pre-test, a test that is done before the lecture so that you know what are the things that you don't understand yet. And wait for vocab 1, then do vocab 3 and 4 again for the test so that this will serve as your evaluation of how you have understood the lectures. So I hope I have clarified what the vocabulary lectures are for. Okay, so vocab 1, it's a lecture. Vocab 2, it's a lecture. Vocab for IELTS is a full-blown discussion, while 3 and 4 will be the evaluation tool that we will use either that you're weak at in terms of the reading, context, and speaking, common issues, and at the same time, we will be able to understand the assessment of how well we understood the lecture. So again, vocabulary for IELTS, this is a totally different game. So I want every one of you to listen to me, pay attention closely. Again, if you want to take notes, no one's stopping you, but I will be handing you over a handout. Everything that is in my lecture will be uploaded together with the replay this afternoon. So vocabulary for IELTS. Now, vocabularies in writing task 1 academic module. Now, I want every one of you to listen, especially academic. I'm not saying that general training, you will not have any use in my first part of the discussion. you will still be able to use some of the phrases here, but as we need to understand, academic module is much more difficult in terms of the criteria, okay, particularly in their writing task 1. So GT for my general training attendees, even though this will not affect your preparation in your letter writing, this is still important because the phrases, the words, the lexicon that you will be seeing here will all be helpful even in your speaking when you are in the country that you want to travel to or country that you would like to work on or to study at. So this is still very essential. But when it comes to the level of seriousness, academic, you will be finding much more use for this as compared to general training. So first of all, writing the introduction. All right. So in writing the introduction, we will be seeing two. All right. We have the static and the process. We will be having the static. All right. Static and process. Your task, academic, is divided into either a static and a process. It's a 50-50% chance. As I've mentioned in your writing task 1 major, there's no way for us to predict what will come out on the test. But when you say static, the words that you will be using here shall be relevant to the presentation of statistical report. And those statics, all right, include the following. So you have your line graph, your bar graph, your pie chart, and your tables. So everything that has to do with numbers, with data, and things that you need to compare, then this is where the static comes into the picture. So static writing, you have your line, bar, pie, and table. All right. The most common out of the 4 will be table. But the most common approach is line graph, specifically if there's a time expression involved. So what about processes? Okay, so processes is the second variant of your task 1, and they involve the illustrations of how something works are created. You will see maps here, flowcharts, and processes. Okay, so in processes, you have the 4 types, the images. You will see them. You will see comparisons of maps. So that's exactly what you're going to expect on your test. And because you will be expecting something like these to come out on your examination, there is an importance that you know how to use these words properly, because you cannot escape them. Your task will be about data, about figures, numbers, amounts, quantity, percentages, proportion, ratio, and rate. And based on what I've explained in your maps, because we have a separate lecture for maps, you have to also be good with direction. So practically, you need to be able to be skillful, all right, in using the following words. And there is a need for those words to be used correctly. So it's not just we're going to use them nonchalantly, we're just going to use them like it's a regular thing, but we will be using them accurately and cohesively within the relevance of your task. So I just want you guys to understand that these words, okay, will be the one that we commonly see in your introduction, all right? Particularly when you see diagrams, illustrations, maps, flowcharts, and processes, these are some of the words that we see on the task description. And as academic, you understand that when you see task descriptions, okay, you need to paraphrase them. And when you paraphrase task description, you will be using words. You will be shifting the transition of the subject, the sentences structure themselves. So all those things are what we're going to make ourselves familiar of. All right. So how is my task description going to yield? How can this task description help me, okay, present an introductory overview of my task? And if you want to write a legitimate introduction, so you have to use the following words. And there is a necessity for these words to be used correctly. And that is what we're going to talk about for the first part. Again, academic, you will not be the only ones finding use for this lecture, because most of the words here will also be useful in your task too, and even in your daily life. When you're already in Canada, when you're already in the UK, let's hope for the best, okay, for everyone. So that's what's going to happen. That is what this lecture is all about. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is number. All right. So the word number, we do not just use it just like that. We don't just use number as is. There is a formula, okay, like mathematics, we will be using formula here. So in number, in using this word, for you to use it correctly, this is how it should be used. You will be putting the word the in front of it and the word of after it. So it becomes the number of, okay? So if you guys can hear me, I hope that you can repeat it yourself. Even though you're muted, you can speak out loud. The number of, that is how you use the word number. Just don't say number as is. You say the number of. But there is another requirement for it to function effectively. You will put it together with a plural noun. Okay, so the number of plus plural noun. So example here, the number of, complete phrase, and then visitors. Look at that. Visitors, that is your plural noun. So the subject that comes after the phrase the number of must always be plural. So, and plural nouns, all right, belong to the countable category. Everything that can be counted, all right? Okay, so what are those? Dogs, you can count it per piece. You can count them individually. Laptops, pillows, bags, marbles, mirrors, people. People is a subject that can be counted. So you're going to use the words, the number of, the phrase itself, plus a plural noun. So that's how you make this, all right? That's how you make this legit. And there's a warning, all right? We do not use the word number, especially if it's in the phrase the number of, to describe percentages or uncountable nouns like money. Okay, so for people who haven't attended my Grammar 1 replay lecture, let me just remind you about countable and non-countable noun. So let me go back to my previous slide so that I can use my annotation much better. All right, let me just remind everyone, this is not for the sake of, you know, repeating things over and over again, but this is for us to understand the difference, okay? So in terms of noun, we have variations of noun. So we have the concrete noun, all right? And we have the abstract noun. All right, so first of all, abstract. So abstract noun is something that you can't count. That's something that doesn't exist in the physical plane. So when you say it doesn't have a manifestation of itself. So abstract nouns, we have things that has to do with virtues, values, and emotions. So let's say happiness. Okay, what else? Freedom, vigilance, hunger, poverty. So all those are what we call abstract noun. Love, hate, all those. We call them abstract noun because we cannot count them. We cannot physically touch it. There's just some representations of it, but that doesn't technically remove the idea that it's still abstract, it's still non-existent, all right? So those are abstract nouns. So we don't have any concern about abstract noun. They are always singular. Love is singular, hate is singular, poverty, freedom, vigilance, all those abstract nouns are singular. So we don't have problems with that. Let us now go to your concrete nouns. So your concrete nouns have different variations as well. So we have the countable, which I'm going to explain later. What is it? We have the non-count. We have the non-count concrete noun. And we also have the group of nouns, all right? Wait a minute. We also have the group, okay? So when it comes to your nouns, so we have the countable, we have the non-count, and we have the group. Okay, so when it comes to countable, those are the things that you can physically count individually, like finger. I have one finger, I have 2, 3, 4, 5. Anything that can be counted using your cardinal digits. Ear, and then I have another. So you have ears. Okay, so you can count it 1 ear, 2 ear, 3 ear, everything that can be counted. Marbles, 1 marble, 2 marble, 3 marbles. People, okay, person, 2 person, 3 person, people. Chair, 1 chair, 2 chair. You get what I mean, okay? Group. So nouns that belong to a group. Let's say we call the group of armed people an army. Okay, we call the group of wolves a pack. What about group of fish? We call them school. So we have different terms for the groups, which will be on a different day. But the one that I would like you guys to focus on is the countable and uncountable. All right, countable and the non-count. So when it comes to countable, it's very easy to understand. You can physically count it using your cardinal digits. But non-count, the non-count nouns are a different game. All right. They can be either in a powder, liquid, or element form. That's why we cannot count it. All right. So for example, coffee. Coffee. So we have the beans, we have the granules, we have the powder, but either versions of it, we refer to coffee as just coffee and not coffees. I'm going to explain later why. Okay. Now, what about the liquid nouns? So we have water, we have oil, okay? We have cologne. What else? You have wine, you have alcohol. Element form. So we have silver, we have metal, leather, all those ideas. So the thing is, the question is, how can non-count noun become plural? Well, if it is alone, if it's just the topic that is being talked about in your discussion, then you cannot use the plural form of it in any way, except, all right, if we're going to use a quantifier. All right, quantifier is what we're going to talk about in your grammar for IELTS. So because I don't want to spoil things, let me just give you a gist of what the grammar for IELTS topic is regarding quantifiers will be about. So what are the quantifiers? So we are going to use the word much, many, less, few. All right, since we cannot, okay, remember this, we cannot count. We cannot count water. We cannot count coffee. We cannot count sugar or honey or water or oil. We cannot count butter as is because we don't have units of measurement to do so. We can only use the word much, less, and the quantifiers that you can use for them. But your many and few, those words are only reserved, all right, for countable nouns. So let's say many visitors, few students, much respect, less water. Again, our topic is not about the concrete, the countable, the non-count, the group nouns. I just gave you guys a general idea of what your countable, non-countable nouns are about so that we can understand your next slides much better. Okay, but if you guys have a question, I want you to reserve that in the end of the lecture. And once I ask you if you have a question so that we can go with the flow. So as I've mentioned, the number of can only be used for plural noun, and plural noun is only for countable. So the number of marbles, the number of mangoes, the number of children, the number of schools, the number of cell phones. You can use it the way you want it as long as it's accurate. What about amount and quantity? Now, this is the opposite. All right. The amount of, that's the phrase. The amount of, the quantity of. Let me repeat myself. The amount of, the quantity of, but this time around, we're not going to use it with a plural noun because if you do that, that is going to be grammatically inaccurate. So what are we going to do instead is to put it together with an uncountable noun, the abstract noun and the concrete noun that is considered liquid, powder, or element form. So you have the amount of, so you can use it with the amount of respect. What about the quantity? The quantity of food. What about the amount of sugar? What about the quantity? The quantity of oil. So you can use it together with any uncountable noun, whether it's concrete, whether it's abstract. But the only thing that you cannot put the amount of or quantity of together with is the countable noun. You cannot use it to say the number of people. You just can't do that. Or sorry, the amount of people. What else? The quantity of visitors. You just don't do that. That's very incorrect. And that will cause you grammatical inaccuracies, which would potentially decrease your score. We don't want that to happen. All right. So the number of is only for plural noun. The amount or quantity of is only for uncountable noun that is in a singular form. All right. What about proportion? So we use proportion plus plural noun. So simple. The proportion of people, the proportion of cars, the proportion of trees, the proportion of planets. It's always plural. It cannot be used together with a singular noun. That's what I want you guys to understand. What about figure? The figure. Okay. The figure is one of the most malleable word out there when it comes to academic use of English. All right. And I like those people who can use the word the figure accurately. All right. Remember, the figure is a phrase that you can rely on. The word itself, figure, is very statistically sounding. So I want you guys to use them whenever you have a chance to do so. So, but this is what I want you guys to understand. The phrase, the figure for, must be complete. Again, look at that. The figure for. 3 words, not the figure of. It should be the figure for. It shows what it represents. So look at that. We can use the figure for. Take a look at this. We can use the figure for, all right, for plural noun. Okay, we can also use the figure for with uncountable noun. We can use it with figure for as a representation of a country. Okay, or the representation of the subject. We can also use the figure for percentages. So take a look at this. The figure for can be used in almost any situation. That's how reliable this phrase is. The figure for Canada shows an increase in female smokers from 1975 to 1985 with a 10% increase. The figure for the television watchers in the United Kingdom rose steadily for the 10-year period. The figure for trees, which were planted in Brazil, increased significantly for the past 2 decades. So you can use the figure for virtually in almost any situation. If you want to use it in the introduction, if you want to use it in the general overview, if you want, you can also use it in your body. So we don't have any problems just as long as you complete the phrase, the figure for. You can use it for plural, you can use it for singular, you can use it for the subject it represents, like country. You can use it virtually in any situation that you want, just as long as you complete the phrase, the figure for. That's it. All right. So next one. So you have the proportion, the figure for. Then we're going to use the word ratio. Ratio, we only use ratio for one thing. And that is if we're trying to show a relationship. Okay? If we're trying to show a relationship, then we are going to use the word ratio. What if you don't have a relationship? Sorry. You're single. Sorry. I'm kidding. Well, the idea here is that we're trying to compare, we're trying to contrast ideas against, we're trying to compare ideas for. So if you have quantity, amount, size between two things or more, then ratio is the best word to use. So take a look at this. The ratio of students to teachers in school is 9:1. What do we mean by this? All right, take a look at this. I'm going to put a heart mark here. Students, that is your 9. We're showing relationship. And for teachers, I'm going to put a star. That is your 1. So what do we mean by this is that student-teacher relationship, you have 9 students for every teacher. Okay, so that's what's being showcased here. So for example, I have here a bar graph. Okay, let me just use a text here. So I have a bar graph. Oh, I'm going to use this. So I have a bar graph. This one, okay, is the use of oil in Russia, the red one. And the green one is the use of oil in Nigeria. So you have the use of oil in Russia, red one, and then you have the use of oil in Nigeria, the green one. So what I'm going to use here is I'm going to use a ratio, the word ratio. All right. So I can say that the ratio of oil use, okay, in Nigeria is 1 to 3 as compared to Russia. Because for every oil used in Nigeria, it's 1/3. If we're going to draw 2 more, okay, I have another, and I have another bar. Now it's complete. Okay, so if you guys can see this. I'm just not very good at drawing, but I know that you get my point. Okay, so that's it. That is for ratio. Now, this one is the word that I would like everyone to be very careful about. Again, I have a lot of students who are very difficult to teach, who are very slow to pick up, but let me highlight this very slowly. The word data, okay? Why is it that when students submit a writing task to me, particularly academic, why is it that I'm always not impressed with their introduction? Is because of this word, because of the word data. I'm not trying to tell you to avoid this word. Okay, let me just clarify. I am not telling you to avoid the word data. Okay, I'm not telling you to avoid the word data. I just want you guys to use the word data properly. Take a look at this. Data may be used both as singular or plural noun. Well, you see, data is considered it's considered singular if it's a group noun. You guys remember we have 3 types of nouns. You have the countable, the uncountable, you have the group. All right. Data is part of the group. Okay. Because data has a singular, which is datum. But datum, that's a Greek word. I don't know, maybe Latin, but you know, you get the point. It's not an English word. So we're trying to avoid to use very technical word like datum. There's no need for that. So instead of using data as a subject, again, when it comes to subject, subject is the first. Let's say the data is, the data are. Both of them are wrong and correct at the same time. The data is and the data are. Both of them are both correct and wrong at the same time. So I want you to avoid the wrong version of it. So, sir, you're trying to tell us that we should totally avoid the word data. Not exactly. As I've mentioned, I'm not trying to let you avoid the word data. As much as possible, I want you to use it. That's why you're seeing the word here. But you use it properly. Instead of using it like this, let me put a red one here. The data shows or show, both of them are wrong and correct, because take a look at that. We have the singular verb shows because data is singular. And since it's a collective, information, we refer to that as singular, but data can also be plural because if it's in individual idea we're referring to, we can use the plural form. So it will create confusion not only to the writer, to the test taker, but also to the examiner. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. So instead of using the word the data as your subject, we use data instead, okay, as a verbal direct object. Okay, verbal direct object. So what we mean by this is that data will not be your subject anymore. Take a look at this. What will be my subject now? My subject now becomes the graph. And the verb, since the graph is singular, my verb is now shows, which means that this is singular. So there's no confusion. And then you will use it as a subject now, as a direct object, okay? We'll use it as a direct object now, so you have the data here, okay? Data on students' tardiness. So instead of data being directly at the very beginning of your sentence, in your introduction, data will be the fourth word. The graph, the illustration, the presentation illustrates data. The presentation gives data on. The bar graphs compare data about. So data will be either on the fourth or fifth word, not the first two. So that's it. I hope you guys understand the confusion, why I hate seeing that word, despite me telling you over and over again, this is how to properly use it. Okay, so sir, you mentioned that there are words that we can use, okay, in task 1. So again, this is task dependent. So if my task is a static, okay, I can choose pie chart. All right, pie chart. The pie chart shows. What about if the pie chart is already been used in your task description? Then you have to be resourceful. I can now use the word circle graph. You get that? All right. What about if I see a map? All right, so map, I can replace it with illustration, okay, or perhaps presentation. If there are two maps comparing different timelines, and I can use the illustration compares the maps of. That's it, so simple, all right? So in the first 2-3 words, we don't have any problems, but most people are having concerns when it comes to the words, the verbs that they're trying to use. Let us remember that when I started teaching IELTS back in 2016, all right, I attended master's training classes. All of these words are acceptable. Again, all of these words. I'm just trying to make myself clear. All of these words were. Look at the verb I'm using, were. It's already over, all right? All of these words, all of them were accepted by the examiners. There's no distinctions in between. There's no problem. But examiners have become too picky when it comes to the verbs being used. Remember, if your words begin with a D, okay? So you have to avoid it, like the word depicts or the word describes. What else? The word denotes. Okay, so why do examiners don't like the words depicts, describes, denotes? And I want to add another, demonstrates. Okay, why do examiners don't like those D words anymore? Take a look at this. When you use the word depicts, okay, I'm going to use my spotlight. When you use the word depicts, the word picked, you're trying to unravel a secret. It's not a secret. Depicts. All right. What else? Describes. The description will come much later in the body. So describe is very non-relevant word. What about denotes? Okay, it's not giving you any notes of some sort. And demonstrates is a very technical word. All right. That is why you can choose within all of the words that I have here. Sir, I have a question. What about delineates? Take a look at this. What about delineates? Delineates also begin with a D. Okay, delineates also begin with a D, but delineates is a very important word if your task is line graph, because it is literally line, delineates. That's why it is useful. All right. I just want to add another reveals. Examiners don't want the word reveal. So I have 5 words blacklisted. All right. I'm going to put a black mark, black strike through. So we don't use depicts. We do not use describes. We do not use denotes. Outlines is okay if it's line graph. Delineate is okay. That's it. Don't also use the word summarizes, because we're not yet in the summary. We're just talking about the introduction. And demonstrates. Di ko pala nakita, dinagdag ko pa dun. So those are the words that we no longer use in your task. So what I favor, as a lecturer myself, what I favor using much more often would be these words. Gives data on. Gives information on. Presents information about. Shows data about. Compares, if we're trying to compare. If it's trying to compare, sorry. Or even shows, comparison, shows contrast. So those are the words that I favor more often as compared to the other ones. So you can use the basic gives or shows, illustrates, but you know what? Examiners are fed up with them because these are literally the words that they see very often. So just try to make, a different game. Okay, we're trying to put your game to the next level by using a much more versatile choice of words. And these are the ones that I've highlighted yellow. So if you want, you can use them. Again, there's no need for you to take screenshots and take notes of this, because literally I'm going to post exactly what's within this lecture. But again, you cannot help yourself. Pero hindi ko na kayo aantay na matapos mag-notes. I'm going to proceed to the next slide. All right. So next topic would be presents versus represents. Sir, I submitted my task to you, and you mentioned that the word represent is not correct. Okay. Sir, is it wrong to use the word represent? Hear me out. The word represent is not practically wrong. Well, again, I am encouraging everyone to use the word represent. If you can, if you have reason to, okay, why not? Okay, but here's the idea. We do not use represent. Take a look at this, listen very closely. We do not use represent. Again, we do not use represent in the introduction. We do not use in the introduction. Remember, the purpose of your introduction and general overview is to give general ideas. And when it comes to general ideas, present will be much better, because present, pinapakita. Represent what it stands for. Okay? So practically, represent is much more vocabulary, much more statistically useful if you're going to use it in the body. So it's so simple. Present and represent will both be seen in my task 1, but they will be found differently. Okay, they will be found in different areas. Present is for intro, even in the general overview, but I'm not a fan of it. while represent will be in the body. So that's it. So what about GT? GT, can you use the word represent? Yes, represent is what it stands for. If you want to give some data, again, in task 2, GT, listen closely. In task 2, open-ended lecturer, I've mentioned that instead of giving opinions, you will be stating facts. And when you want to state facts, which basically were you found from doing your own research, represent is what it stands for. So you can use it, say, single women without children. Okay, take a look at this. Single women without children represented 54% of the total population. That is how you use the word represent properly. In this case, what it stands for. So you can also use this in your task 2, academic and general training, not just in task 1. So in your writing task 1 academic, there is a requirement for you to use the time expressions correctly. Remember, we will be having your grammar, I don't know, 6 or 7. I thought we're done with 6. Let me check my classes list. All right. So if I'm not mistaken, we're already through with your 6. Okay. So we will be jumping right into your no, I think we're not yet over. So for grammar 6 and grammar 7, we will be talking more in depth when it comes to your prepositional phrases, and even with your sentence construction. All right. So with that, I will be teaching you how to use the preposition of time and preposition of place properly. So I would like everyone to also attend the lecture when we have a chance. But here are just some of the most common expressions that involve time in your task 1. Again, they're already expressed. You can change the time expressions here because in writing task 1 academic, especially line graph or pie chart, bar graph table with time expressions, they are not just years. Sometimes we see months or we see days, weekly basis, or hours, even hours on a 24-hour period. So we will be using various types of prepositions, and you have to do so accurately. Not just prepositions, but remember maps. Okay, so we also have prepositions of time. Academic task 1 writers, you still have your map, so you have to be good with directions. And when you use directions, we use in, on, at. We use those words. In front, the back, parallel, adjacent. So I have discussed that in my lecture already. So do your review, academic. So in line graph, okay, in line graph, examiners are already fed up. They're already used to seeing the words increase. They're already used to seeing decrease. That's what they normally do on a daily basis. They check tasks every day, thousands of them, okay? And for your task to remain statistically relevant, you have to use words which are ideally coherent, okay, with your topic. So if I want to use the word increase, and I know that examiners are used to the word increase, I can use a synonym of that, okay? So we have 2. We have soar, okay, take a look at this. We have soar, and we have rocket. Or even, if it's already in the past, then skyrocketed. So let's say I have a line here, okay, let's say by 1940, the population is just about 4 billion. But in 1970, became about 6. So definitely there's a huge increase. So I will say that the population soared to 6 billion. The population skyrocketed to 6 billion. Remember that both the words soar and rocket can only be used in extreme, rapid increases that happens very sudden. Let's say 1965. Okay, let me change my my option here. 1965, the price of Coca-Cola is $1. $1 per can. But in 2020, price is $10. So definitely from 1 to 10, there's a 10-fold increase. If it's let's say on a 20-year basis, okay, in comparison. So I can use the word skyrocketed. The figure for Coca-Cola price skyrocketed from $1 to $10 after 50 years, 55, 70 years. I'm not good at mathematics, subtracting these numbers, but you guys understand where I'm getting here. All right, so soar and rocket, we only use it for very high level of increases for a very sudden period of time. So please use these words properly, okay, in replacement for your increase, definitely, okay. So leap, climb. Leap is also a word that mentions a fairly large increase. Let's say the employment, okay, the employment of Philippine employment rate is around 12%, let's say in 1970s. But when it's 2015, 1975, and then 2015, it now became 43%. So meaning there's a very huge gap. So that's leap, okay? And because both 2015 and 1975 are years which are already over, so you will be using the past form of leap, which is leapt. So the Philippine employment rate leapt from 12% in 1975 to 43% by the year 2015. You know, that's very academic, all right? Climb is a relatively neutral verb. So I have a sample here. The population climbed to over 1 million by 1980. So climbed to, the price is leapt to 90% in 1 year. So those are my samples of using the words leap, climb, soar, and rocket. Use them appropriately for your own accord. So what about surge? Surge also means to rise suddenly. There's no need to use an adverb for this one. So again, when you say adverb, those are the words that end with "ly." Okay, those are the words that end with "ly." Example, quickly, suddenly, slowly, gradually. Those are some of the words, adverbs that we normally use in your task 1 statistical report. But academic, listen closely. We do not use the words quickly, suddenly, slowly, gradually. We don't use them if we are already using extreme words. Kung ang gagamitin mo na will be soar, rocket, leap, climb, surge. We do not use adverbs because those words are already in extreme mode. So if you want, you can use a combination. Sometimes gagamit ka ng extreme words. Sometimes gagamit ka ng suddenly increased. Suddenly, a sudden inclination can be observed. So those are some of the choices that you have for line graphs, specifically since examiners don't want to use the very basic increase, decrease. Those are very regular for them. So try to become a bit more on your lane, where you're on the next level anyway, because you're being taught by a lecture like this. So please be much more adept in terms of the words that you're going to use. So surge, we're done with surge. What about down verbs? Okay, so for down verbs, we have slip back. Okay, slip back is used for falls that come after rises. Let me repeat myself here. Slip back is used for falls that comes after rises. So let us look at the example right here. Let us look at the example, all right? So that we can understand this much better. The use of electricity slipped back to 50 units in May. All right, so we shall take a look at this. January, all right, you have 50 units. And then you have your February, there's an increase. It's a fairly small increase, so I will use the word climb. So electricity use in February climbed to 70 units. While March remains 70. April, it became 90 units. And by May, it returned to the initial 50 unit use of electricity. So what happens here is that I'm going to give a discussion, something like this. In January, the use of electricity recorded 50 units. After a month, a 20 unit increase can be observed, followed by stagnation, or followed by remaining the same by March. In April, electricity use surged to 90, and the use of electricity slipped back to 50 units in May because it returned to its original figure. So if it is a rise that came after a fall, we call that slip back. So why did I use the past form of the verb? Because it's already in the past. All right. Drop and dip are fairly used for small decreases. So let's say the drop in crime rate can be seen last year. So let's say the year prior to that, 2019, crime rate. Okay, let's write 2019 crime rate was about, say, 8%. 2020, it dropped, but not very significantly. Let's say it's about 6%. There's a drop, yes, but it's not very huge. So I'll be using the words drop and dip to show that the decrease were just fairly significant. So a drop in crime rate can be seen last year. Crime rate by 2020 dipped to 6%. So you can use the words drop and drip. Okay. Sorry, dip. Drop and dip are both plural and are both nouns and verbs at the same time. So if you're going to use the noun form, don't forget that bawal kang maglagay ng tense. You cannot say drop PPED. It's not going to happen. And instead, you will be putting an article, because an article together with the noun is match made in heaven. So what about, sir, if I want to use this a drop, okay, if I want to use this a drop as, let's say, if I want to use this a drop, okay, if I want to use this a drop in crime rate, gusto kong gawin yung drop as, I want to use this a drop as a verb. So this is how I'm going to use it. Crime rate dropped. Okay, text. However, for example, I'm going to use the word however. However, crime rate, that's my subject, drop, which is already in the past, drop to 6% by the year 2020. So in this case, I use the word drop as a verb, and I did so accurately, but you can also use a drop in crime rate can be seen last year, which means that your drop or dip is now a noun, not a verb. So those are the difference between the nouns and verbs. It's very common. This is, elementary English. I hope you guys understand your normal stuff. So plummet and plunge. Take a look at that. Plummet and plunge. Those are the extreme falls. All right. If the fall is extreme, then we use plummet. We use plunge. Is the strongest word. It means to fall very quickly and a long way. Take a look at this. The number of tourists to the city plummets after September. Let's say consistently January, Feb, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. Consistently, it's around 500 to 800 visitors. But when October came, which is after September, from 500 to 800, it's now about 60 to 70 individuals visiting the city. That is plummet, because plummet from hundreds became tens. Let's say take a look at this. The number of students plunged from 1,400 to 150. That's very exponential when it comes to the comparison of how low it fell. It fell about 9 times less than its initial figure of 1,400. It's only about 150 now. So that's very extreme. So as much as possible, we use plunge and plummet only for strong words during the decrease. But if it's increased, we can use skyrocketed. Can use peak. We can use the following words. All right. The key in your task 1 is always in the word. So academic, I hope that you are going to review this many times over. Again, in future forms, we do not use will probably reach, will likely reach. That's, I don't know, prediction. And there's no space for prediction here because we're trying to sound statistical as much as possible. All right. The figure should reach. I taught you in your grammar 4 that should is giving an advice. It's the model of advice. So you're not trying to advise the term to reach 15,000, right? Or the figure is likely to reach 15,000 in 2020. So instead of this, these are the words that we use, okay, for future. Let's say, take a look at this. The population in 2020 is normally around 7 billion. 2020, you have 7B people. While the population of 2050, exactly 30 years later, is expected to balloon to 10 billion. So how can I statistically write a sentence comparing 2020 to 2050, avoiding that it will likely, it should likely, and things like that? This is how my sentence goes. Okay, it is expected that by the year 2050, population or the world population and then I'm going to use the word would, it's important, would reach 10 billion. Would increase, would fell, or would decline, would fall, sorry, would remain the same if it's not going to make any sudden movements from the line. So it is expected that by the year 2050, the world's population would reach 10 billion. Again, I'm just shortcutting 10B here. I'm going to write 10 billion when it's actually a task, all right? So, sir, I will take my exams. Let's say I'm Nina. Nina, Alj, can you hear me? All right. Let's say I'm Nina, and I'm going to take my exams in November. And I will be using expected. While Alj, can you hear me? All right. we'll be using the same. The problem is we're both going to use the same word. No, LJ, Nina, listen to me. You can use the words here. You have predicted. It is predicted that by the year 2050, the world's population would reach 10 billion. Or it is anticipated that by the year 2050, you can also change the sentence structure if I were you. It is forecasted that the world's population would reach 10 billion by the year 2050. What I did here is I put this, the world's population would reach 10 billion. Okay, take a look at that. Here, in this part. And the 2050 will be, they will be, switching sides. So it is forecasted that the world's population would increase to 10 billion by the year 2050. So that it will create an impression that there's a variety of your sentence structure. So I just want you guys to understand that predicted, expected, anticipated, forecasted, estimated are the words we're going to use if there's a future time expression involved in your task. Okay, so that's it. So again, if you want academic, there are various noun preposition combination that you can use. The comparison of trees planted versus trees cut in Brazil. The differences between the, let me use my spotlight. The differences between the leisure activities done by men and women, the changes in the map of Cabanatuan City for the past 10 years, the number of enrollees, information on different students' leisure activities, data on supply of metal in China. So you get the idea. These are the noun preposition combinations that you can use. Again, you don't have to copy. We literally have a handout for this. Okay, so it's up to you if you want to print it. Okay, verbs and prepositions. Before I proceed any further, ACA GT, specifically ACA, do you guys have any questions or concerns? I know that sometimes, things are difficult for you, but I hope you guys, absorbed everything that I'm discussing here. ACAD, LJ, Nina, Jao, Leslie, Emil, Sheena, Christine Mercado. Do you guys have any questions?
None, sir.
None, sir.
None, sir.
Okay. I hope that by saying none or no questions, it means that you totally understood all the things that I'm telling here. Because I will see to it whether you're lying if I will see that your tasks are still having such cases of flaws. I don't want you guys to commit those same mistakes done by my past students. I want your task to be as flawless as possible. So please use these techniques, tips, use the words that I have here properly and accurately. This is for you, not for me. You will be the one to take the exams, not me. All right. So let's talk about the difference between by and to. Again, this one probably, ACAD, masyado kayong binibaby, yes, Sheena, you raised your hand. Please tell me, what is it?
Sir, may question lang po ako dun po sa isa increase po. Yung words po na nag-end sa yung quickly, suddenly, slowly, and gradually. Yung search lang po yung gagamitin doon.
Actually, doon sa 5 words, diba? You heard that there are what we call extreme words. Sige, let us go back. Okay, let me go back. Meron tayong mga tinatawag na extreme words. And sa up verbs, ito yung mga extreme words. Okay? Soar at saka rocket. Look at this. We will not be qualifying these words with verbs and adverbs because soar, rocket, surge, and leap, those words are already extreme. Those words are already next level. So if we're referring to increase, increase is level 1, but soar is level 5. So if I'm going to put the word soar or rocket together with suddenly, that is redundant. Why? Because soar means to increase suddenly. Why am I going to use the word suddenly? Right? Right, Sheena?
Opo, sir. Thank you po.
Okay. Another Sheena, ito pa. In noun verbs, okay, we already saw na meron tayong extreme words, which is yung plummet at saka plunge. So same concept applies. You do not say suddenly plummeted or plunge extremely, because plunge and plummet, they're already next level decrease. So that's why we cannot qualify them with adjectives and adverbs. Now, another question pops. Kasi you see guys, especially academic, pag ginamit ko lang si plummet, si plunge, or si rocket, hindi na ako makakagamit ng mga madadaming word combinations. Kaya, as I've mentioned a while ago, you can do combinations. Gagamitin mo si plummet if you have a chance. Gamitin mo naman si suddenly fell, or sa increase naman, it increased suddenly. So I'm trying to say, you will be using the words increase. You're going to use the word decrease, fell, inclined. Still, you will still be using them. But all I'm trying to say is that if there are situations, if we can use plummet, plunge, soar, rocket, leap, surge, use them because examiners like them. Okay?
Thank you po, sir.
All right, Sheena. Akad, all right. So the other remaining Akad, Aljay, Nina, Emil, Jao, Leslie. If you guys have any questions or concerns, Christine, please just raise your hand or you can unmute yourself. You're allowed to do so. You're allowed to do that, okay? So what about this? This one, as I've mentioned, academic masyado kong binibaby, no? Kasi yung ibang hirap talagang pumick up eh. All right, pula, para galit. Pula, para galit na galit. All right, so I have here the difference between by versus to. Okay, just remember, by refers to the difference, to new figure. Again, by is for difference, and then to is new figure. Okay. So I have here a sample. So let's say February. I am saving money. So in February, my savings is already in 150,000 pesos. Okay, so 150,000. Now by March, my savings is about 175,000 pesos. Now I would like to ask you a questions. Am I going to use by or to? Akad, answer me. Am I going to use the word by or to? Jao, I want to ask you, Jao. Should I use by or to? Jao. Jao.
Sir, to.
Okay. Jao answered to. What about you, Aljanina? Should I use by or to?
Sir, to po.
Oh, okay. You know what, guys? There's no context yet. So I just want academic to understand that both by and to will be useful here. Okay, both by and to will be used for here. So from February, I saved 150,000. By March, it's around 175,000. If I am going to use by, take a look at this. If I am going to use by, then I am referring to the difference. Take a look at this, huh? Okay. Kevin's savings was at 150,000. Hindi ko na susulat yung PHP. By the month during, parang hindi naman pa ulit-ulit yung by, during the month of March. The month of February. Meanwhile, it increased. Okay, I'm using the word increase. That's my verb. But the question is, what am I going to use? Is it by or to? Now, for the first part, I'm going to use by. It increased by 25,000 in March. Okay, so by. We just draw something. I used the word by because the difference between 150,000 and 175,000 is 25,000. So the difference, I subtracted them. But if I'm going to use the word to, it increased to. Instead now of subtracting, I am referring to the new figure, which in this case, 175,000. Take a look at this. Kevin's savings was at 150,000 during the month of February. Meanwhile, it increased to 175,000 in March. So we use to. If it's the new figure, we use by for the difference between the figures we're trying to compare. So it's not just for increase that you can use this for. You can also use this for decreases. All right. Decreased by 10%. Increased to 12%. Things alike. All right. So that's it. I'm going to clear my drawing so that you can see this much better. Tingnan nyo to ha. This year, okay, unemployment has increased by 20,000 cases. Take a look at that. By 20,000. 20,000. The difference between this year and last year is 20,000. So probably I can draw something like this. 2020, that was last year. We have unemployment of 170,000 individuals. 2021, okay, it increased by 20,000. So what's the difference between 170,000 so that we can get 20,000 out of this? It means that unemployment has increased to 190,000. That's why the writer here used the word by, because the difference between this year's unemployment as compared to last year is 20,000 more. That's why it's 190,000. Okay, so not just only academic, but GT. I hope you guys understand this. Before I proceed any further, do you guys have any questions with by and to? Aka, GT, questions. By, to, of, from, here. Okay, now what about of? All right, take a look at that. What about of? Okay, so we are using the preposition by. We are using the preposition to for verb. Okay, for verb, we use the preposition by. We use the preposition to. But for now, okay, for noun, we use the preposition of. We use the preposition of. An increase of, a decrease of. Remember, if the preposition that you're going to use is of, it's clearly highlighted by red here, it's of, okay, then you will be using the noun. And if you're using a noun, you need an article an increase, a decrease, a sudden growth, a minimal improvement, and then increase. The words that you will be using must not contain any tenses whatsoever. An increase in smoking rate of 2%, a decrease of 2% can be observed in smoking rate among students. Laptop purchase has shown an increase of 5% in sales. Of is for noun. By and to are for verbs. So those are very clear. Okay, I have repeated that so many times already. I hope you guys already got my point. Okay, so peaked. The difference between peak, you can use peak as a verb. So because peak is a verb, okay, so peak verb, this will be the one to have the tense. So peaks for singular, peak for plural, peaking for present participle, peaked for both past form and past participle. Now for peak noun, because it's missing a verb, you will be using the word reach. Reach a peak. Notice that the A here represents that the preceded word will be a noun, which is in this case a peak. Now, sir, what about if we're talking about the past form? Then you'll add an ed. Reached a peak. Reached a peak. And remember, since it's a noun, we're going to use the word of. Reached a peak of. Okay. Peaked by, since it's a verb, peak to. Are we clear, academic? So let's give you an example. Supplement use peaked. I'm using it as a verb, peaked at 25% in April, or peaked to 25% in April. It reached a peak of 25% in April, if I'm referring to as a noun. So that's it. Use the word peak if this is the largest point, if it is the topmost point of your line graph, even pie chart, even table, even your bar graph, if it is the highest, this is the time that you can use your peak. And it's very academically sounding. So please use them accordingly. So here are the words that you can use. I've already presented here the of, the to, and even the tenses that you can choose from. So you don't have to copy. I'll be giving you the handout for this. Time expressions in the body paragraph. You can also have a copy here. It's included in the handout. All right. Writing about a process. Remember, if we're referring to processes, this will be a very useful topic for us to start right now, because by next week, that's the time that we will be discussing processes academic. All right. So in the first stage is when the process begins with, the process commences at, the process starts when. So I'll be explaining to you how we can use these ones. So pwede nyo itong gamitin as your guide, academic, when we do the process. So if we're referring to the next stages of the topic, these are the words you can choose from. Like this is the first step, you're going to the next step. What will be the words or phrase that you're going to use? This one, this is followed by. Okay, in the following stage, or in the stage following this, or my favorite is this, once this stage is complete. So for example, process ng pagsasaing, di ba? So start the process of cooking rice begins with cleaning the granules using running water. Once this stage is complete, the person will measure, or the person measures, the water level, making sure that it is equivalent to 1 part rice and 1 portion water. Once this stage is complete, after this step is completed, so by next week or the week after this academic, we will be jumping right into your process writing. So this will be very useful for you. I just gave you a very quick example of how this can be useful for us. So please use them accordingly. All right. What about maps? Again, so positions of the map, locations. You can use the words it's connected to, in the middle, in the center, on the side, along the, at the center, along, off, across, opposite, close to, adjacent, next to, beside, surrounding, at the rear, at the front, in front of, beside, behind, next to, nearby, and beyond. So use them accordingly. Again, you have your handout later. All of these words can be found there. Useful vocab for describing maps. So you have residential area, industrial area, commercial area, woodland, intersection, proximity means closeness. Okay, from this area to the next area, how far or how close are they to one another? So what are the words? What are the verbs that I can use for describing maps? So what happens if there will be different time expressions, like the one I have given you as an example, the map of what map is that? Let me try to remember. The map of Meadowside Village and Fountain. All right, in your academic map subject, when we discussed that, there were changes, 1962, 1985, and present. So what happened? Were there some modifications did? Why don't you use the word change? All right, why don't you use the words constructed, built, modified, relocated, demolished if it is torn completely, replaced. If before it was a supermarket, now it was demolished and turned into a residential area. So it was replaced, substituted for something, expanded. If it became much larger, you can use the word expanded to, expanded from. Okay, so those are very useful when it comes to maps. Okay, both in task 1 and task 2, we want to show transitions. Okay, academic, general training, listen very carefully, especially GT, because you're probably had so many information overload already, because most of the information I have discussed previously were not going to be very useful in your task 1. But I, again, mentioned that it will be useful for your speaking, for your writing tasks as well. So, but for both ACAD and GT, may attend this for today, I want to highlight this important, the transition, okay, the importance of transition. It means that you're trying to move from one idea to the next. So there should be a smooth flow between those ideas, right? So it is important for us test takers to understand that if we want to show contrast, transition will be very helpful for us, okay? So take a look at this. Take a look at this. The Middle East produces high levels of oil. Take a look at that. The Middle East produces high levels of oil. I'm going to show contrast here. But look at this idea. We refer to this as your dependent clause. Japan produces none. Remember, the sentence, the Middle East produces high levels of oil compared to Japan produces none. Both of them are independent. They are sentences by themselves. Like if we will cover, take a look at this. If we will cover the Middle East and however, Japan produces none. What none is this? So Japan produces no oil. So that is a sentence by itself. But since we want to put them together because I want to show comparison, that this one is opposite to this one, then the word that can be useful for this is the word however. The Middle East produces high levels of oil. However, Japan produces none. I repeat, the Middle East produces high levels of oil. However, Japan produces none. Now take a look at how the word however is used here. There is a semicolon. There's a semicolon before the word however, and there is a comma after the word however. So if you're going to use the subordinating conjunction, you're going to use subordinating conjunctions, you will be using a semicolon before it and a comma after it inside the sentence. But if you're going to use the subordinating conjunction to begin a new sentence, like however, I'm going to start a sentence, I'm just going to put a comma after the word however. So what else? What are the other words that I can use to show contrast? Compared to, in contrast, in comparison. All right, again, this is just for the basic discussion of your showing contrast. The number of male smokers in 2000 stood at 20% compared to 15% of the female population. Is there a contrast? Yes, male and female, they're in comparison. The most popular form of holiday among the Welsh was self-catering, with over 60% choosing to cook for themselves. In contrast, only 5% of the English choose this form of vacation, and hotel accommodation was much more popular at 48%. Trying to compare. Last bullet point, almost 50% of the English, Scots, and Northern Irish chose to stay in a hotel for their holiday. In comparison, or in contrast, or however, I can use it. Staying in self-catering accommodation was much less popular, with around 10% of people choosing this. So those are some of the ways. I have a lot more ways, okay, later. Those are just some of the ways that you can use to show transition if you're trying to create a contrasting idea between two topics, either within the sentence or two sentences apart. Okay. So whereas and while. Again, one of the ways why I like to use, or one of the ways why I keep on telling my students to use this version, to use this version, it's because many people forget the dependent clause. Sometimes they stop here. There's no Japan produces none anymore. So let me read this. Okay, let me read this. Let me put a red mark here so that you can see it much better. So, whereas the Middle East produces high levels of oil, sometimes people stop there. Or while the Middle East produces high levels of oil, sometimes they stop there. The problem is because while the Middle East produces high levels of oil, that is a dependent clause. It is dependent on the clause or on the sentence that comes after it. So why I want this instead, take a look at this, Take a look at this very carefully. The Middle East produces high levels of oil, while Japan produces none, or whereas Japan produces none. It's because there's no way for you to forget that there's an independent and there's a dependent clause. Remember, it's much better to put the while or whereas in the middle of the sentence rather in the beginning, because there's a tendency that students will forget the dependent clause. All right. So this one is much better for me. But again, if you want and if you can, all right, if you can show your versatility in sentence structure, if you want to use this, just do so appropriately. All right. Or another, although the Middle East produced 100 tons of oil, Japan produced none. So you can use them, your subordinate conjunctions properly in your sentence structure. What about showing similarities? Okay. showing similarities. Academic, listen closely. We do not use the word tied or tied up. Diyos ko, pag nakakabasa ako na to, sumasakit ang mata ko. Sabihin ng student, let's say Africa. Africa has mined 15 kilograms or 15 carat, 15 ounces of diamond, while Russia mined about 14.3%, 14.3 ounces of diamond. Take a look at that. All right, both Africa and Russia mine diamonds, but there's a bit bit of difference. And a student wrote something like this. Okay, a student wrote something like this. Africa and Russia are tied. Okay, Africa and Russia are tied. Jao, can you tell me what's wrong with the word tied? Jao?
Sir, masyadong vague yung tied. Parang hindi siya appropriate to use in showing similarities.
Tell me, Jao, anong Tagalog ng tied?
Tied is parang
Tagalog lang, Tagalog.
parang pinagdugtong. Tama ba ako, sir?
Jao, tinan mo ha, meron kang lubed, di ba?
Mm-mm.
Lubed.
Yes, sir. Parang
And
tinali.
yung tied. Tinali.
Mm-mm.
LJ, Nina, question. Manok ba para itali si Africa tsaka si Russia?
Sir, hindi po.
Ano lang ba tinatali? Asawa lang, di ba, Nina?
Hindi nga matali, sir.
Ay, naku, Diyos ko. Ayan na, Diyos ko. Ayan na tayo. Alright, so, as I've mentioned, tied or tied up, they're not very statistically relevant kasi that's literally tinali. Right? So, why do people use the word tie? Kasi in the Filipino culture, yung tie kasi parang it's a tie, tabla. Di ba? So, pag may mga tabla tayo na pinapanood ng mga competitions, we refer to tie. Okay? So, that's not literally the case. Guys, wait a minute ha. I'm just going to grab something. Just give me about 30 seconds. I'm just going to be very quick. And we will be continuing. We'll be continuing discussing this, showing similarities. If you have questions later, sagutin natin. Just give me 30 seconds to 1 minute. Right, guys, I'm back. So instead of using tie or tied to show that two ideas are very similar, you can use this, very similar. Or number 3. I'm going to read number 3 to you, and I'm going to tell you why I like this compared to all the other ways of presenting two similar information, except I, okay? So the percentage of females who studied at university in 2011 was almost exactly the same as in 2012, which creates the idea, an impression in an examiner's mind. If I'm the one assessing this, the person is trying to show comparison in a similar way. So the person is trying to show similarity between the two ideas. So it means that if the percentage of females who studied at university in 2000 was 5%, and it says almost exactly the same as in 2012, then literally, it's also about 5%, right? So there's no difference between the two. That's all I'm trying to say about this topic. Now, what about other expressions of vocabulary? Now, many of you have seen my presentation before, and you will notice about the word respectively. Okay, so what does respectively mean? Okay, respectively means in this order, all right? So let me just get my annotation. Respectively means in that order or in this order, okay? So let me read this. For men, the proportion of treatment admissions rose from 1.8% in 1998 to 8.1% a decade later, which means that this one is the figure for 1998, this one is the figure for 2008. Once again, this is the figure for 1998, while this is the figure for 2008, because literally that's a decade later. Now there's a comparison for women. For women, those figures were at 3.5 and 13.3 respectively. So what are we trying to show here? It's that as a writer, I don't want to use in 1998 and a decade later anymore. That's why I use the word respectively. That implies that the 3.5% was the 1998 figure and the 13.3% was the figure that compares the male in a decade later. So that's it. So respectively, mostly I use respectively for more often. Okay, I use the word respectively much more often for two categories I'm presenting, but I use the word former, latter as well. Former, latter. Okay, so this is how the former, latter rules go. All right. For example, Kevin and Nico aren't my friends, or aren't just my friends. They are, or because the former is my cousin, while the latter is my uncle. All right. So in this occasion, I have here Kevin and Nico. Kevin and Nico aren't just my friends, because the former, that is Kevin, is my cousin, while the latter, that is Nico, is my uncle. Okay. So former is the one that was mentioned first. Latter is the one that was mentioned next. But in respectively, you can also use this for multiple types, okay? So let's say I have 3 leisure activities. So for boys, these are the leisure activities that they prefer in order, all right? So you have playing sports, video games, and reading. While for girls, these are the one that they prefer. Reading, and then listening to music, and lastly would be I don't know, let's say playing sports. All right, by category, okay? Now, all right, if I'm going to write a sentence here, all right, boys preferred playing video games at 14%, while video games recorded 12%. Additionally, reading is their least preferred leisure activity. Now, if I'm going to go to the girls' side, because they're connected, all right? So on the other hand, girls' preference of leisure activity is different than boys because they recorded reading at 15%, listening to music at 10%, and playing sports at 8% respectively. It means that it comes in that order from highest to lowest because I ranked it from highest to lowest on the boys' side, and I also did that for the girls on the other side. So that is exactly what we're trying to mean by this respectively former latter rule. Okay, so this is very useful, the former latter and respectively rule, because we don't want to repeat the words too often. Okay, for your vocabulary. So academic, you also have to take note of that. All right. So what about the words? Sorry, my annotations are having problem with my mouse. Okay. So what about this? We use allocate, comprise, compose, make up, consist, account for pie charts. They are very useful. All right. For pie chart, we will be having a class for that probably late October, the last week of October. So you will be seeing these words. So for academic, the latter portion of this lecture, especially the handout that I'm going to provide, I want you to have them printed out if possible, or if not, I want you to put a screenshot of them. Okay, so that we can have an idea, all right, how to use allocate for, comprise, compose, make up, consist, and even account for. Again, account for is very useful. For me, account for is one of the most useful words in a statistical language. So we use it primarily for what it accounts for. So take a look at the example. Married women with and without children accounted for the remaining fifth or 20%. Accounted for. So accounted for the highest, accounted for the least, accounted for 15%. So you can use account for percentages. Okay. So what about conclusion? All right, write in the conclusion or the overview. So this one, okay, these are the words that you can use even in past two. All right, in past two, we use all of them. But for overview of your task one, we only use one word, and that is overall. You cannot use in conclusion, you cannot use on the whole, you cannot use to conclude or to summarize, to sum up, or in summary, you can't use those words. For task one, you can only use one, which is overall. That is for the general overview, the paragraph that comes after your introduction. Okay. Next, all right. Vocabulary and writing task 2. Again, for my participants today, both ACAD and GT, this is the most useful part. So I want you to pay attention to this very closely. This will be the last part of my discussion as well. All right. What are the words that I can use if I am making general statements? All right. As I've mentioned in part 1. Okay. By the way, if I want to jump right into task 2, it's very rude of me not to ask questions. Academic attendees, Sheena, LJ, Nina, Jao, Christine, Emil, Leslie. Do you have any questions before I proceed to task 2?
None, sir.
Hey, that's great. If you don't have questions, all right, there's a chat. None. Okay. So it's okay, guys. We will be jumping right into your task 2. Again, in task 2, there is also a requirement for us test takers to use the words correctly. And there are different words that we use depending on different situations. So let us talk about which word will be useful in which situation for your task 2. Okay. Now, this is what I want you guys to pay attention first. The making general statements. All right. Making general statements. All right. Generally, in most cases, for the most part, in general, by and large. Okay. Those are the words that you can use. Those are the phrases that you can use if you're trying to make a general statement. So for example, students use computers to do the research. And I want to use a vocabulary for a general statement because I want the reader to understand that this is happening very often. This is regularly a regular thing. Okay. So I'll be using generally. Listen, generally, students use computers, cell phones, and other gadgets to do their research because it is more convenient than going to the library. That's it. In most cases, what about in most cases? Let me ask a question. Sheena, let me ask you a question. Do you think that people in far-flung areas, like the one in Ifugao, the one in Sulu, do you think that many people there don't have access to healthcare? Generally.
Yes, sir.
All right. So because that is the case, I will be using the word or the phrase in most cases. So in most cases, people from far-flung areas do not have access to healthcare. That's it. I'm making a general statement. I will use the word generally in most cases, overall, for the most part, in general, by and large. So those are the phrases that I can use if I'm making general statements. All right. What about if there are multiple ideas that I would like to arrange? Let's say in your agree or disagree, or even your discuss both views. There's a need for us writers to sequence the first ideas. All right, so I want to mention that this is the first reason. So the main reason is I can use that. The most important consideration is I can also use that. But the word that I don't want you to use is this. First of all. And the words like firstly. All right, or secondly. All right, or thirdly, and finally. Examiners hate it when writers just count the ideas. So we don't want to do that, okay? So how can I use this? The main reason is, all right? The main reason why many young people do not respect the elderlies is because of the generation gap. That's just my first idea. I don't have reason yet, Okay. What about this? The most important consideration of distance learning is making sure that students are safe inside their home from the virus. That's it. I'm making a first idea. So I'm going to go to the latter ideas, but that's how I'm going to begin my paragraphs using those ideas. So again, we don't want to use the words firstly, first of all, thirdly, finally, because examiners don't want them anymore. Okay, so again, because that's what they don't want, we're not going to give one. All right, sir, that's my first idea. I have another idea. Okay, what word can I use if I am going to add supporting ideas? So when you say supporting ideas, these are the ideas that have the same implication. So if the first idea that I mentioned in that paragraph is positive, let's say we're talking about the most important consideration why computers are better when it comes to getting information as compared to the library. So I'm going to say the most important consideration why computer is more important than going to the library or better than going to the library is its accessibility. All right, so that's it. Well, I'm going to go to the next paragraph. What word or phrase can I use? It's another supporting idea. I'm going to give positive idea defending computers and gadgets and internet again. So I'm going to say that another consideration, I'm going to use that. Or, okay, here are the list of the words that you can use. Another reason is, another point is, another consideration is, or furthermore, moreover, what else? In addition to that, additionally, or simply by writing in addition. All right. Again, don't ever forget the commas. All right. So the three dots that you see here, the three dots that you see here in my my phrases mean that this is the part where you're going to put the ideas. All right. This is the part where you're going to write the remaining parts of your sentence or perhaps the entire paragraph. That is how you add ideas. Okay. What about if the idea is in contrast? All right. What about if the idea is in contrast? Let's say this is a positive idea for you to discuss both views, but you're also going to provide a negative argument. What word can I use? All right. So I have a list of the words already laid upon you. All you have to do is to look carefully, but I'm going to use my check mark right here. So I have here in contrast, this one. On the other hand, I have however, I have on the contrary, I have nevertheless and nonetheless. You know, nevertheless and nonetheless, I'm not a fan because if you're going to count the number of letters in that word, it's about 14. But if you're going to write on the other hand, it's 4 words, very easy to spell out. Remember, spelling is also part of your grammatical range and accuracy. So make sure that your spelling will also be accurate. Okay. So what about the on the one hand? Take a look at this. What about on the one hand? On the one hand, I just don't want you to use on the one hand if you already will be using the on the other hand. Because anong dating nun? On the one hand, on the other hand, on the left foot. Diba? So what's that? All right. So seems like nagbibilang na lang tayo ng limbs. So if you're going to use on the other hand, which I use much more often, you will not see me write on the one hand. So it's up to you. You choose on the one hand or on the other hand. It's up to you. All right. So what about this? The in spite of and despite. Okay. I just want to highlight the importance of this. When you use the word spite, look at this. When you use the word spite, there should be in and then space and then spite and then space and then off. Don't forget the comma. All right. Despite, there should be no off. Okay. In spite of the advantages that computers bring, they also have negative effects to the studies of children. Or if I don't want in spite of, despite. Despite the advantages of using computers in education, there are still negative effects. So that is how you use the words in spite of and the word despite properly. Despite, walang of. Ang merong of, si in spite of. Okay, those are the words that we use to showcase contrasting ideas. All right. Even though I can use, even though many people like to cook their meals at home, comma, there are still individuals who prefer to eat at restaurants because they do not have skills to cook. That's so simple. All right, so I used even though. So it's up to you. What word do you want? I listed all of the words here. All you need to do is to use them. So it's not only that you improve your vocabulary and lexical resource, this idea here, the idea of showing contrast, showing opposing, showing supporting ideas through words will also enhance your coherence and cohesion score dramatically. So please use these words. Use them and use them properly. Even the punctuations. Okay. So, any questions before I proceed to the next slide? Do you guys have any questions at all? Jezreel, Leslie, Emil, Jocelyn, Christine Mercado, Aljanina, Jao, Sheena, do you have any questions?
Sir, wala po.
Okay. So again, I want to repeat this idea. You don't have to copy. You don't have to take screenshots of this. I will be giving you a handout containing everything in this lecture. So you don't have to think that is a problem. All right, I'm going to just clear my drawings and let us proceed to the next slide. Okay. Every paragraph. All right. So for example, I'm doing an agree, disagree. And you understand that in agree, disagree, we have total of 5 paragraphs. So you have the introduction, you have the body paragraph 1, you have the body paragraph 2, then you have the body paragraph 3, and then you have the conclusion. And we mentioned that it is better if those body paragraphs will have examples or will have specific ideas. All right. So if they have examples, we don't want to repeat the example word. We don't want to repeat them, right? Because examiners will definitely see that we're repeating words. We're just recycling them. And repetition, redundancies are not allowed, okay? So if in body 1, I will be using, for example, I can use, for instance, for body 2, and I can use to illustrate for body 3. I want to lengthen the, for example, I want to be much more dynamically sounding. So I'm going to use the word, a clear example of this is, that's 6 words in total. So it's much better than, for example, it only contains 2. So words, more words, you win, okay? So, all right, in the body, all right, in the body, it's not only that we're going to use examples, but we're also going to pay attention to the reasons. So let's say body paragraphs contains reasons why it's positive, why it's negative. So you're going to defend your idea. Let's say, why do you think internet is better as compared to using books from the library when it comes to studying? All right. So I can start like this. There are different reasons why. Take a look at this. Generally, that's the first idea kanina. Generally, many students use computers instead of going to the library for their studies because of its convenience. So if I'm going to use another phrase for that. There are many different reasons why students use the internet to access information rather than to go to the library. And one of them is accessibility. All right. One of them is convenience. So you can use, there are many different reasons why, and then explain what is that reason. Okay. The reason for this, okay, many people prefer eating at home rather than eating at restaurants, period. The reason for this is that they claim that home-cooked meals enable them to budget their money for food and control the amount of nutrients in the ingredients that they cook. That's it. So I can use the words, the reason for this is because, this is due to, there are different reasons why there are several explanations for, okay? That's it. What about to be more precise, if you want to clarify an opinion, specifically in the conclusion part, all right? In other words, I don't want to use the in other words here because it creates an impression that, the reader does not understand what you're trying to describe. So in other words, I want you to avoid this completely. So you can use by this, I mean, you can use more specifically. More specifically, okay, college students who are in distance learning are finding hard time accessing information from the library, and internet is the place where they can access all the books that they want to study for. So that's just an example if you want to clarify an opinion. All right, if you are drawing a conclusion, all right, if you're drawing a conclusion in the concluding paragraph, these are the words that you can use. In summary, to sum up, on the whole, to conclude. All right. But as a consequence, you use it for the body. So this is the idea. All right. So many people, especially young students, use internet very often for their studies. As a consequence, they become heavily dependent to screen time that makes their eyes tired, and they are prone to false information online. So that's as a consequence. I draw a conclusion from one idea. So as a consequence, as a result, you can use these words, or therefore, if you're drawing a conclusion on paragraph level. But for the entire essay, you have the in summary, to sum up, to summarize, on the whole, to conclude, in conclusion. All right, those are the words that you can use if you're trying to draw a conclusion depending on different situations. Okay, now, what about stating your opinion? All right, from my point of view, from my perspective, or in my opinion. Okay, so for example, many people want to bring back capital punishment because for them, it will create a culture where people will be afraid to commit crimes. From my perspective, I am against this idea. From my point of view, I am totally against not maintaining the libraries anymore. In my opinion, this will bring more harm than benefits to the country. So you use the words from my perspective, from my point of view, in my opinion. All right, does somewhat agree to a certain degree, to some extent. I will be explaining it to you, this idea, soon when we reach to what extent do you agree, disagree. So for now, I'm going to drop a black curtain here so that you will not be focusing yourself too much here. All right, if you want to begin your essay, especially in the introduction, all right, the topic is about, let's change the topic a bit. Increasing the cost of fuel to help solve the environment's problem. All right, so that's the topic, increasing the cost of oil so that people will be demotivated to use their cars excessively, and that will result to a reduction in global warming, technically. So I want to begin my essay, and I can't just start it right away. Parang I'm having troubles how to begin my discussion. So what I'm going to do instead is I will choose between from the point of view of the public and some people believe. All right, or besides this one, you can use from the point of view of many individuals. Okay, many individuals claim that. Many persons are of the opinion that. So you can use those other people's opinions phrases. From the point of view of the public, some people believe, some people assert the opinion that, some people believe in the idea that. So you can use that. All right. So from the point of view of many individuals, comma, increasing the price of oil will help solve the world's environmental problem. Period. However, I do not find myself in accord with this notion. That is my stand. And then you can begin the body. Reason 1, reason 2, reason 3. So that's how you begin your introduction. So what about making concessions? It is sometimes argued that. So if I'm jumping right into the discussable views, I can use the it is sometimes argued that. Again, this is task specific. It doesn't work like, hey, I want to use this or I want to use that right away. You have to read between the lines. So it's sometimes argued that. This is sometimes much better to be used in discussable views. All right. It is sometimes argued that eating at home is better than cooking or than ordering food from the restaurants. Meanwhile, many others believe that restaurant meals offer convenience to them. That's the end. That's the first side. That's the second side. That's the end of your introduction. All right. So making concession, you can use it is sometimes argued that. Admittedly, however, you can also use that. Okay. So that will be your the words for this case. Now let me jump right into the next slide. All right. To give advantages. Now, not only with the question, do you think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, where we can use the to give advantages, you can use it in any way you like. You want to present an idea in a discussable view that has an advantage, and you can use this. Yeah, you want to present an idea, positive ideas about agree, disagree. Let's say using computers versus using books, you can use this. So a major advantage of this is, so what is this? You can replace this with anything. A major advantage of, let's say, home cooked meals. A major advantage of home cooked meals as compared to eating at restaurants is that people can measure the amount and content of the dish that they are preparing. This is very important for people who are health conscious and who have health problems. We take an example. For example, many people with high blood and high cholesterol sugar, or sorry, high blood sugar and high cholesterol, all right, can minimize their intake because they can prepare their own meals at home. So you have given the idea, you defended the idea, you presented the example. So another advantage on the next paragraph, what I'm going to use. In addition to that, moreover, or another important merit is, another benefit is, there are some more benefits too. Okay, so what about if this is the advantage? Let's say many people want their countries to host international sports competition because, you know, everybody knows that it gives pride and joy to the citizens. But there's also disadvantage because you have to discuss both sides. So in the advantage part, there's the advantage of hosting an international sporting event. It's you can showcase your country. Particularly, you can present what your country has to offer to tourists. You can promote the hospitality of your country, which technically will create more investments in the future. So That's the advantage. But there's also the other side. There's also the problem. So what if I'm going to jump right into the next idea, and on the next idea, I will present the disadvantage or the other opposite end. So one major drawback is, okay, let me change the color. One major drawback of what? One major drawback of hosting international sporting events in one's country is that many of the infrastructure in the previous hosts were not long-term. This means that the budget, which was specifically designated for building the arena, the lodging of the athletes will only last for a short period of time. Can you give me an example? Yes. You have the London Olympics, you have the Brazil, Rio de Janeiro Olympics. And the problem there was that they were trying to maintain the infrastructure. But the problem is that it's so far from where the athletes locally reside, because they have to travel very far away. It's a very secluded area. And maintaining it doesn't justify the end, because technically it will not yield to more investments anymore. So that's a problem. Okay, so if you don't want to use the one major drawback is, you can use another advantage is, or one limitation is that, or there are some disadvantages to eating meals at fast food chains. All right, and then give an example. Okay, owing to the reason, due to the fact that, for the reason that, because of, you can use them to express reasons. All right, and then to express result, as a consequence, as a result, consequently, thus, hence, thereby. So you can also use those words properly. Now, to emphasize ideas, this is the part where you need to use, if you're trying to emphasize ideas, this is the part where you can use the adverbs more often. You can use obviously. Obviously, there are disadvantages in increasing the price of oil. Clearly, there are benefits of increasing a country's food yield. Evidently, children can enhance their problem-solving skills through playing computer games. So you can use those words and all the other words here. In fact, certainly, definitely, indeed, absolutely, unquestionably, without a doubt, objectively, in fact. If you want to start, okay, to choose one option over another. So you have two options, literally. You want to choose another, might be the better option. Alternative ideas, okay? If you're going to present alternative ideas, let's say the problem caused by environmental degradation due to global warming is because of emissions. And what's the better option? Diba? To go to the alternative means, which are renewable sources of energy. So to solve the world's environmental problem, it is not only enough for people to act, but we should change the source of energy into renewable, because I believe this might be the better option. That means you're choosing this one over the other. Makes it a better policy, it's beneficial, positive, it is detrimental, worse, the assertion that, this one is very long, but this is very essential. The assertion that using internet to study seems to offer strong arguments against going to the library because it provides accessibility and convenience to learners. Diba? It sounds very academic. It sounds very neat and precise. It sounds so concise. If you're going to use words, please use the ones that I'm putting in this lecture. Please, all right? This is for your own good. Okay, this one, I've presented the ways how people how you can quote the opinions of people. So what about sir? I'm already used to them. Okay, balikan natin. This one. All right. From the point of view of the public, and some people believe. What about, sir, if I don't want to use either of them? Do we have another option? Yes. You have here it is often claimed that. It is often claimed by people that hosting an international sporting events will bring more benefits to the country. It is often said that due to the improvements of technology, the culture would eventually diminish. People are convinced that if we increase the price of oil, the environmental problem will be solved. Some people argue that, some people assert that, some point out, walang subject, so I don't want this. Some state that, so there should be some individuals, some people, some individuals, because some point and some state, some mangoes, some carabao, so you have to complete your sentence. Okay, that's lesson number 1, all right? You have to make your sentences as complete as possible. So synonyms of advantages and disadvantages, we will be using them for your, do you think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? So I will be also listing them down and samples as to how we can use them in sentence structure. So don't worry, we will be breezing this one aside. Can just use benefits, drawbacks, downsides for the meantime, all right? Synonyms of good and bad, you have positive, negative, favorable, unfavorable, desirable, undesirable, beneficial, detrimental. Even for open-ended, we will be using the causes, the effects. So synonyms for causes, I have here, look at my spotlight. I have here the factors, issues responsible for. The factors responsible for environmental degradation, according to many people, is due to vehicular emissions, example, all right? Or the factors, issues which have contributed to, the issues which have resulted in, or which have led to. Those are some of the phrases you can use to replace cause. What about causes? Again, this one, effects. These are some of the synonyms that you can use effects with. The issues it has resulted in, which have resulted from, all right? The issues that global warming has resulted in cannot be ignored because this affects the livelihood of many people, at the same time, the lives of individuals globally. That's the idea. That's how you start your sentence. And then you explain, you give reasons. What about solution? Examiners will also ask you about synonyms for causes, synonyms for effects, and solutions, not only in writing, but also in speaking. So you can use the word means or ways to solve as a replacement for solution. Means, ways to resolve, deal with, tackle, to improve, as ways for you to use the word solution as a replacement in the speaking test. Okay, so those are very important. Don't forget. Okay. So collocation, again, collocation is literally replacement. So let's just breeze this aside, okay? So guys, that will be the end of our lecture for today. But before I end the topic, do you guys have any questions so far that you have for me? Jocelyn, Sheena, Emil, Jao, Leslie, Christine, Jezreel, Aljanina, do you have questions?
Answer.
Okay. I'm still waiting for some of you guys na may tanong. Baka meron.
None, sir. Thank you po.
Okay, thank you so much, Aljanina. Jocelyn, Sheena, do you have questions?
None, sir.
None po, sir.
Okay. Jao, Leslie, do you have questions?
So far, sir, none.
Okay, Christine, Jezreel, do you have any concerns? All right. So thank you guys for attending this lecture. I'm going to send the handout on our Facebook group. In that handout, it also contains a seat work, which you can do. And I will upload the answer key for that in about a day. So if I'm going to submit it by around 3 p.m. together with the replay of the video. So because people need to rewatch this. So the video link, replay, the lecture, handout, all the things that's contained in this lecture, the activity, all right, and then do the activity. If you want, you can print it. I've already posted the link of the activity, if I'm not mistaken, in advance, but I will be re-uploading that if I haven't, which is by 3 p.m. today. And then the answer key will be provided to you tomorrow, so that huwag naman masyadong madaliin. All right, so just absorb everything. So the part where the speaking, the vocabularies in speaking, I will be adding that, okay? Kasi I have missed that part in our discussion. I just talked about writing task 1 academic and particularly writing task 2, both acad and GT. But writing, the vocabularies for writing, I will add that in the common mistakes in IELTS. So that is also a major lecture. So we will find a potential date for where we can possibly put that or slide that into our schedule. So with that, guys, I thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for attending this lecture. I hope you guys are safe and dry, and you will be having your seat work later at 3 p.m. Good luck, everyone. Have a nice day. God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Ingat po.
Okay, bye-bye.